Hey, I'm Rachel,
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballot.
powered by DoorDash. Hello, welcome to another episode of Beyond a Ballot. It's been a beat. Hey?
It's yes, it has. A lot has gone on, but we had an incredible episode as we were heading into the throne speech, and we got to talk about all things royal.
Yes.
And now we're back because a lot has happened since that throne speech, which feels like weeks ago, and
No
it really
kidding.
wasn't at all.
I know, and apologies to our listeners. We did have an episode planned for last week. Amanda was a little under the weather, but you're feeling better.
Oh, I was a lot under the weather, and I'm
I
sure
didn't want to ruin it for everybody.
I'm sure that anyone who's listening can attest to this. It's been a weird time, like especially if you have kids. I feel like so much is going around right now. It's been awful. So I had strep. I've never had
Wow,
strep.
that's a throwback. You've never had it in your life?
I've never had it. It was a terrible, no good, very bad.
Very bad.
Very, very bad.
Oh my God. Well, I've had a horrible week too because I had a sick kid home and the school keeps calling me to pick her up, even though I keep taking her back.
No.
So it's been a bit of a journey the last 2 weeks. And I was thinking about the fact that a lot of our audience is new. They don't really know what we do with our lives outside of this podcast. And so I thought maybe we could just share that also for those that don't know us. What do you do in a normal day besides this podcast?
Rachel, that's such a big...
I know. You do a lot. You do a lot.
Well, what do I do? Okay. So for those who don't know us that well, I'm a mom of 3.
Yes.
I have twin girls who couldn't be less alike.
Twins,
they
but
just
not
turned
twins.
8 years old. They're in grade 2, and I have an 11-year-old son whose claim to fame is that he's a big go-kart racer and, gives me heart attacks every week.
And your claim
On
to
the racetrack.
fame being the mom watching him on the
Totally.
racetrack. That's crazy.
It is crazy. I run a PR firm called Pomp and Circumstance, and our sister agency Bonus Track, which we launched a couple of years ago. We're heading into our 10th year.
That's crazy.
Check us out.
What?
And people always ask all the time, they're like, oh, do you do like GR, government relations? Do you do? No, we do not. We do work for brands like Tiffany's and BMW and
So nice.
Air Miles and a whole bunch of food and bev and all kinds of things in between, but nothing to do with government. So where do I get my political fix? Well,
Here.
on this podcast and on CBC, where I am a regular panelist on Power and Politics, which many of our listeners also tune into.
But not only a regular panelist, you've been there forever. You're like an OG of PMP.
I know. I think it's really been a long time.
Like over a decade, right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, it has been. And you? Rach, talk about
well,
you.
what do I do in a day? I also do a ton of different things, but basically I do the GR side of things. So
Yes.
I do government every day. And I have 2 young girls. They're 2 and 4. So they keep me extremely busy. And then Beyond a Ballot I do every day, and I do media stuff. I do Power and Politics too, and a bunch of BC media. So we're kind of like opposite sides of the country, doing very working in similar worlds, but
Yep.
there's been a lot that's happened in the last couple of weeks.
So much.
In Ottawa specifically. I mean, I'm in BC, so there's been a lot that's happening here, and Ontario too. There's been some controversy over bills that have been passed in both legislatures over the last week in regards to resource projects. And why is that happening? Because Mark Carney had the first ministers, all of the premiers together in Saskatchewan, actually, this week to really talk about how we are going to expand our own dependence on resources in this country and expand interprovincial trade, which was a big topic of discussion today because that bill for interprovincial trade was actually tabled by the Liberals in the House of Commons this morning. So that was a big step for them.
Yeah, so much going on. Like I would say an extremely ambitious agenda.
Yeah.
Especially wanting to table legislation both on the interprovincial trade barriers and the middle class tax cut. As you know, they sort of set this deadline of July 1st to get these things moving. That's really, really speedy, but really, really necessary. And I think my takeaway from the First Minister's meeting was a lot of goodwill at the table. There are things that are happening that are within the federal government's control, and then there's things that are happening between the provinces themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Breaking down their own barriers, deals that are being made between the provinces. And part of it's like, if you think about, we were not even having these discussions 6 months ago,
which is crazy.
It's crazy. So the fact that we're proving, I think, something really important to Canadians, that things can get done quickly, that we can remove our own barriers in the best interest of Canadians. I think that that's an important message. I think we're seeing it in real time. I have never felt like we are in the kind of a terrible, uncertain set of circumstances right now. And yet at the same time, I feel like the country is functioning in a way that I'm really quite proud of. So that's my takeaway of what's been happening over the last little while.
What did Doug Ford say this week? Love is in the air.
Love is in the air.
What a guy.
He's so funny.
He is. I don't know if anybody watched the First Minister's meeting or his press conference. He said it was the best meeting he's been to in a decade.
It was a love in.
Wow, was he loving everything. Yeah, I mean,
totally.
It was a love in for Doug Ford. I don't know. British Columbia, our premier, is currently hiding in Asia on a 10-day trip, trade mission, which he went on all of a sudden after passing this very controversial bill. We had Nikki Sharma sitting at that table. She is the Attorney General and the Deputy Premier of British Columbia, so our premier wasn't there. BC has become a big part of this conversation because we do have an NDP government. David Eby did a press conference from Asia in the middle of the night, actually, BC time. So not many British Columbians saw it. I was giving a talk the next morning and I said to 500 people in this room, put up your hand if you watched David Eby's press conference last night. Not even one hand went up. And he was talking about how BC will not be building a pipeline after a lot of discussion at the First Minister's table about that. And Danielle Smith, really coming to the table saying that she needs that for Alberta. And Mark Carney, shockingly, after many years of the Trudeau government saying no, saying he wants to talk about it and find what's that called, when every agreement amongst all of the provinces to make consensus. Yeah, that's what his exact word was, consensus on all of these projects. And so I don't know, maybe it's not feeling this way in Ontario, but it kind of feels like we came out of the First Minister's meeting, everybody was kind of happy. It was kind of like, okay, let's meet again and kind of talk this through. And then BC came out and said, absolutely not. We are going to be the biggest barrier to everybody to love being in the air.
That was it. I mean, I felt like BC Premier Eby splashed cold water on this
from Asia
on this kumbaya that had happened at the First Minister's meeting. But I think this conversation is just beginning. And I think that a lot has changed. We just said it. A lot has changed in the last 6 months in the country. I think the appetite that Canadians have for these projects has changed. I think that we're facing a set of circumstances that we weren't facing before, and we have to alleviate our reliance on the U.S. both from a trade perspective, but also from a security perspective. And that's going to require us to be able to get our resources to market. And I think the premiers are in agreement on that. The challenge is going to be what the challenge has always been. And that is, how do you do that while protecting the environment and the interest groups that advocate hard on that behalf?
Indigenous groups.
And Indigenous groups. And I think that is not insurmountable.
No.
But it is going to require It's going to require consensus, yes, from the other premiers, but I think it's going to require a bit of hand-holding through this period, bringing people along, understanding the will of the country, the will of Canadians. What do Canadians want? What do they expect out of this government, out of this parliament, out of this session? And those things matter. So, and I think as negotiations continue with Trump and as we see his continued erratic behavior around tariffs, again, people are saying we need every tool in the toolbox. That's a big one. So I would be surprised if we don't see a pipeline. But the final thing I'll say on it is that it's not just pipelines. We were hoping for a list of projects. We didn't get a list of projects quite yet.
Yeah. I heard internally that was because BC was being quite difficult at that table. And that we gave the premiers a bit of a runaround.
That's too bad.
It is. It is.
I listened to Premier Simpson. We don't talk about Premier Simpson very much.
I know.
From the Northwest Territories. Having a moment, a big moment.
Yes.
Because, he was at the table talking about protecting Northern Canada, Canada's role in protecting the Arctic, the resources from that territory. And I thought it was really interesting and he came with the projects that he was hoping to move along. He came with consensus from Indigenous communities. And I thought that so he came with a package ready to go.
Good for him.
This is what we need to see our premiers doing.
Yes.
Reaching out the arms, bringing people along, finding ways to move these projects, understanding that it's never been more critical to do so.
Well, I do say that David Eby's hiding in Asia somewhat facetiously, but it's also somewhat true because basically what happened in BC last week is that he passed a bill that would allow for the province of British Columbia to pass resource projects based on this criteria of quote unquote provincial interest, the interest of the province, best interest of the province. And one of the biggest issues is that we have UNDRIP legislation that was passed a few years ago in British Columbia, meaning that there is a duty to consult on BC's legislation with Indigenous groups. They did not consult with anybody, let alone Indigenous groups, on Bill 15. And so, just to see the Premier of the Northwest Territories come to the table in that way and the mess that's been created in British Columbia, and now this huge national roadblock that's been created by British Columbia is just so disappointing as a British Columbian and as a Canadian. But a big part of this conversation was Danielle Smith and the question over Alberta's sovereignty and secession from the rest of Canada, which has been a big topic of conversation in politics recently. But Smith came to the table during this meeting, and there was a lot of question about whether or not she would play ball because she's been pretty feisty with what Alberta wants. She ended up being pretty nice, and she left and had a press conference. She said that, she's willing to have these conversations and work with the premiers. She has some red lines of what she needs in order for Alberta to feel like they are getting what they need. But again, a lot of that has to do with that northern pipeline from Alberta to British Columbia.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that, I don't know about you, every radio interview I have done in the last couple of weeks or TV, they all want to talk about whether or not Alberta is serious. And frankly, I think there is some seriousness to the conversation, and there's definitely seriousness in terms of what Danielle Smith is putting on the table and what she will expect other provinces to do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I thought, but again, Premier Eby had some very pointed words for both Premier Danielle Smith and Premier Ford in his press conference, right?
Yeah.
He was like, I'm not telling Premier Ford that he can't build his tunnel under the 401. And I'm not telling Premier Danielle Smith, he was but what do you think as a British Columbian? As you're watching this, I know you just said you were disappointed, but do you feel that British Columbians feel like he's advocating on their behalf, that this is the will of the province, that they don't want to see these projects happen?
I just don't understand what the plan of the EB government is, because he died on this hill. He passed Bill 15. There was opposition from most stakeholders. He upset people that have been longtime NDP supporters because he said he needed to have a bill where he could control what's in the province's interest and put shovels in the ground and build.
Right.
Then all the premiers come to him and say, we had this great meeting. Everyone was kumbaya and we're putting this pipeline in potentially. Will you talk to us about it? And he said, no. And it's like, well, why did you put your political career on the line and all of your stakeholders that this NDP government has worked for a decade to really work with on the provincial level, if you're just going to be the roadblock to any kind of progress, any kind of, not even putting shovels in the ground, but having that conversation? And especially the thing for me that came to boil was the fact that he's standing in Asia. He's not even at the premier's table. It seems as though he just made this trip happen. He did a press conference at the Vancouver airport at 2:00 on a Saturday to try and change the narrative here. And now everybody in Canada is celebrating, and he's in Asia saying, no, I'm going to be the biggest roadblock to any kind of answer here. So, not to like pile on David Eby, but really in the national conversation this week, and Andrew Scheer, the interim leader of the Conservatives, came out and said the same thing, that, he is a big problem in this equation right now. And domestically in British Columbia, nobody can understand why he did it.
Yeah.
So,
well, this could be a big problem for him. But let's talk about the catalyst for all of these conversations. Our favorite thing to talk about, President Trump.
Yeah.
A new wave of tariffs on steel and aluminum, but also a secret conversations.
Yes.
That we heard about yesterday or earlier this week. Happening between Prime Minister Carney and President Trump. So we all recall the Oval Office meeting went well. Everyone felt like it went well. There was some critique of Prime Minister Carney this week because they said, listen, Trump goes ahead. He slaps these tariffs on another 25% on steel and aluminum.
Yeah.
That wasn't just affecting Canada. That was a global response. So everyone is affected, but Canada really affected because of how much steel and aluminum crosses our border. So the critique of Carney was, you need to act fast. We need to retaliate quickly. And the response from the Prime Minister's office was much more muted. He started off with some harsh language. He said, what Trump is doing is illegal. It's harmful. We're not going to stand by and let it happen, but we are going to take a minute. We're going to take a minute to decide how we're going to respond. I personally liked that response. I think that we've really been, it's been difficult to deal with Trump's knee-jerk reactions to everything. When he jumps, we all say how high, people react.
Fair.
It's too much. And I think that having an adult in the room who says, take a pause, let's think this through. But then we learned yesterday.
Exactly.
Maybe the pause was happening because there's all of these secret conversations underway. So tell us what you know, what you've heard about this.
I was thinking, we've talked about counter tariffs and being ready for anything. And let's just take a beat here to recognize these tariffs being doubled is a massive impact on the Canadian economy, on jobs, especially in the province of Ontario, our biggest province. So that was really surprising and not a good thing. Then when he came out and said, we're going to take a minute to really decide, it was like, well, didn't we all talk about this communally during the campaign? We were like, yeah, we want counter tariffs. We want to strike back. Isn't this how he got his mandate? And then yesterday morning, this in my world, it started to trickle out. Oh, we think these people have gone offline. We can't find these people. Oh, where could there be conversations happening with the US president? And then it kind of built, and I kept looking online for the story. And halfway through the day, it started to kind of trickle out this idea that perhaps we could have a deal similar to the UK deal that was signed in the next 24, 48 hours. One of the impetuses of that is that a lot of you are going to gasp at this if you don't already know it, but Donald Trump's coming to Canada in T minus 8 days. He's going to be crossing the Canadian border. He's going to be in Alberta for the G7 meeting that we are hosting on the 15th of June. And so there has probably been a lot of pressure to try and turn down the heat when it comes to Canada before he physically gets here. Super weird way to do diplomacy, but these are the times we're living in.
These are the times. And the backdrop of these conversations, which of course, couple of things on the conversation. So this is what we understand. We understand that they're talking about more U.S. content in auto. We understand that they're talking about more access to Canadian critical minerals, obviously energy, the border, trafficking of fentanyl. These are all topics of discussion under this deal. I would imagine steel and aluminum. So we're waiting to hear how that's going to manifest. We also know that this is a conversation that's happening exclusively between Canada and the US with the exclusion of Mexico, which Correct. I also thought was interesting. So not a North American conversation, but a bilateral conversation. The other thing that is happening at the same time as we're waiting to find out the outcome of these discussions, these negotiations, which are so important to Canada, to our economy, is that Trump is busy having his bromance with Elon Musk. It has come to a bitter, bitter end.
Bitter. Oh my Lord, is this what? This
Wowza.
Yesterday I saw this and I was like, is this real? Could this be real? And then it just never ended. And they're like school kids, you did this. No, you did this. I don't know. And now a word from our title sponsor, DoorDash. Just like we go beyond a ballot, DoorDash goes beyond delivery. Last week, we heard from Shika, a founder of Sai Krishna Foods in Moncton, New Brunswick, about how DoorDash helped her establish a presence in a new community. This week, she shares more about how partnering with DoorDash connects her to a wider range of customers.
DoorDash understood what the customers want, what is their needs, what is their desires. If you are able to get your loyalty, people are loyal to you. To have that kind of love from your customers is very important, and that's what motivates me.
Okay, tell us a little bit about the spat.
So Elon came out, I think he was the one who took the first swing, and he said that the reason that the Epstein files aren't being released is because Trump is included in them. And
I think that was the final swing.
Was it? What was the first one? Oh, I've been under a rock with a sick kid, so tell me what I missed.
Okay, so the first swing was that Elon Musk came out aggressively against Trump's big, beautiful bill.
Yes, of course. Okay? Of course. Yeah.
So there was a falling out on that level.
Right.
Then they started to go back and forth on X, formerly Twitter. You can go online. You can see this play out for yourself. It was so Trump was on Truth Social. Elon Musk was on his platform X. They were going at each other, and then the final blow was that. And Elon Musk kind of framed it this way. He's like, "I'm going to let it go now. I'm going to give it all
Lord.
now." They were threatening. Trump was threatening to. Obviously, Elon Musk businesses are highly regulated businesses, right? Yes. The EV business, the space business. And so Trump was threatening those businesses over Truth Social. And then Musk was going back and forth. And then he finally said, here's a blow that'll really hurt. And he started talking about Trump's involvement with Epstein and the fact that those files, the investigation, that there's some secrecy and things are being hidden in that way. So anyways, it was like a total implosion of that relationship, which nobody could see that coming. We could all see that coming.
The thing is, I'd love to be a fly on the wall of Mark Carney's office. You know, he's like this banker who just became the prime minister of like a mid-level country, and he's like in negotiations with these people as they're having this Twitter war about what SpaceX and electric vehicles, and what must this guy be thinking?
He was saying that, MAGA will never buy another Tesla.
Oh my
And then God. Tesla stock went down 20%.
But here's the thing, like everybody in BC is driving around these Teslas and it says, we bought this before we knew Elon was crazy. And like, I wonder if people were ripping those off yesterday because it's now him versus Trump and like, who's going to side with that guy? But yeah, I don't know. It's something we've never experienced up here. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Imagine if Pierre and Carney went at it on X. I don't think either of them even know how to use it.
No, I can't. I can't picture that. But let's talk about our friend Pierre.
Okay. Yes. Let's talk about my friend Pierre. Yes.
So some not great news came out yesterday.
Tell me.
Nanos poll.
Yes.
Polled that Poilievre is down 13 points. That's a big ouch.
Him or the Conservatives?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm gonna look that up while we talk about it.
Okay.
So let's talk. I think that a lot of that has to do with the honeymoon period that Carney is enjoying right now, and I think that that's very typical for Carney's popularity has really risen. He has a high favorability rate. He has a high approval rating right now. And typically when things like that happen, the opposition party or the other candidate tends to take a dip. So that's not entirely unexpected, but at the same time alarming because Poilievre has a couple of things that he's contending with. Obviously, he's not physically in the House himself, so he's kind of out of the news cycle.
Yes.
He has a by-election that's going to be coming up in the next couple of months. And he also has a leadership review. So let me ask you this. Do you think that polls like this get planted?
Planted?
Like, do you think that if you were a candidate who was maybe interested in seeing Poilievre not do so well in a leadership review because you have your heart set on being the next leader of the Conservative Party? I mean,
no, I don't.
Okay. You tell me what you think.
So I actually do think, and for everybody I've talked to in the Conservative caucus, like I really do think there is they are rallying behind Pierre. I think they do recognize him as the leader, and they're all kind of just waiting for him to go through this by-election, make sure he wins. We're looking, I've heard if Mark Carney holds his word and he calls this by-election, we're looking potentially at somewhere around August 5th for the by-election, meaning that Pierre, if he wins, would be back in the House for the fall sitting. Right. I think, honestly, and I said this the other day on a panel, I think he's done a great job of trying to keep up in the news cycle without actually having a seat, and still retaining this idea of being the leader. So he's been out doing press conferences after major events like the throne speech. He was out doing press conferences on something else that Carney announced, but he's been there. He's been in Ottawa. He's been talking in the media. It's not easy. I think it actually worked out well for him in the throne speech because if you didn't know, members of parliament aren't allowed on the floor of the Senate. It's tradition. They're actually barred, like literally barred. There is a bar and they cannot cross it. But because Pierre is not a sitting MP, he was able to sit on the floor of the King's speech, the speech from the throne. So he got some airtime there sitting next to the former prime ministers. I think ultimately this poll comes down to the fact that people want to see who Mark Carney is. I think there's still this big question mark. Who is this guy? What is his governing style? I mean, a bunch of us were very thrown when he came out with one mandate letter with 5 priorities for his ministers. We've seen this week they decided not to table a budget, and they put out estimates with an increase in spending of 8% more than what Justin Trudeau was anticipating. I think that Canadians are still wondering, like, is this guy a spender? Is he pulling back on spending? Is he going to work with the provinces? Is he going to be effective in bringing everybody together? So I think that interest around who is Mark Carney, how does he govern, is he a good prime minister, is still very high. And during the campaign, like I said, we had these conversations. He said, I'm going to fight Trump. I'm going to go toe to toe to Trump. Yeah. Will that play out? I think that's what Canadians want to see. I think more so than Pierre doing anything to really go down in the polls. I think it's more about that.
So let me just clarify on the poll.
Yes.
So the poll was about him specifically.
Okay. That's what I
thought. He in the latest preferred prime minister numbers, Poilievre dropped sharply since April. Only 28 of respondents say he is their choice.
We do, just for context.
That is down from 34% a week ago and 13 points down from immediately after the general election. Like, listen, there's reasons for that where we have a new prime minister and he is in the honeymoon. But I have to say, objectively speaking, that is a tough position to be in when you're going to be undergoing a leadership review. You do not want to see that sharp decline. You don't want to see those numbers in the news cycle. You just don't. And we know that there's people gunning for him. There's some Ontario conservatives that would like to see
Doug Ford.
and friends who would like to see his reign come to an end. So I think that this is a little bit tricky for Poilievre at this time.
I don't feel that. You're all going to say it's my bias, but I just talking to a lot of members of caucus, I'm surprised. Like, I remember living through the Andrew Scheer days, when the first one, then Aaron O'Toole, like you could feel the animosity within caucus. You could tell there was strain there. I'm just not feeling it in what I'm getting from caucus right now. Like, I really don't think that the number one thing that they're talking about is like getting rid of Pierre. I think they really want to see this by-election happen. They really want to reposition. They want to get stuff done. Like they have said, they will sit all summer. They want to see the finances. They won that first vote to have the government put out a financial statement. We'll see whether or not they end up doing that. So I think that right now it's much more focused on like strategy. How do we reposition with this new government than it is, let's get rid of the leader. But maybe that's just my crew that I
mean, could be.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this, because I love these questions.
Okay.
If he did not pass the leadership review, I know you think that's unlikely, and maybe it is. Who would be in the wings? Rachel, tell us.
God, there's so many that I love that I would love to see. I mean,
I just put you on the spot.
We're all rooting for Lanceman, of course.
Of course.
You know, Shuv is such a brilliant leader within that caucus. There are some really exciting conservatives. And a lot of people that I was staff with in the Harper era, people are now all becoming the MPs, which is kind of cool because I always say we got the best political training because of the fact that we were in government with Harper. We were a new government, and like just the way the government was run at that time, like we got the grade A political staffer training, and now all of those people are the politicians, and they're teaching the next generation of political staff. So I think there's a lot of people internally. I will say there's probably a lot of people on the outside, some names that would float around, former ministers from the Harper era. But we're not there yet. We've got Pierre, and I think most people are generally happy with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's her final word.
Who comes after Carney? Everybody.
Oh, that's such a long time away now.
I got this question the other day on this panel, and what's the timeline on Carney? And the Liberal that was on the panel said, we're looking at like a 2-year timeline potentially till he gets frustrated and leaves. So the Liberals out there, start finding your next leader too. Maybe it'll be you.
That would be a hard no.
Absolutely not. Okay.
Absolutely not.
But
moving on.
Okay, let's end on this. G7 happening on next week.
Yep.
Crazy news that Trump is coming. The other crazy thing, the Prime Minister of India has now decided to come. He was invited. And this is wild because under Justin Trudeau, Canada accused India of murdering a Canadian citizen in Surrey, British Columbia.
Yes.
Ties have been cut. This has been stressful. Talk about the most stressful dinner party Mark Carney could ever host.
Oh my goodness, right?
Like, everybody's stressed out. I feel bad for his team. So how are you feeling?
This is like the peak of diplomacy,
the
right?
Peak.
This is like,
let's bring all the world's problems into our borders.
Totally.
And into Alberta, no less. Into Alberta. This is going to be just I can't wait to watch this.
It's going to be a shit show. But what I love about this actually is that, listen, when you want to put a spotlight on your country,
yes,
I can't imagine a better way to do it. We just talked about this earlier. Trump is physically going to be in the country. And as the host country, you really have an opportunity to spotlight who we are as a country, what we value as a country, what assets we have as a country. And I think that the serendipity of being the first country to host the G7 since Trump's election and since Trump's chaos presents a real opportunity for Carney if he's able to seize it. And we're seeing some of those, that's playing out right now in real time with the discussions that we're hearing about. If Carney is able to come to a deal with Trump, if he's able to come to a deal with Trump, if he's able to remove the interprovincial trade barriers as he promised and see these deals happen between the provinces, and he's able to get this middle class tax cut signed, sealed, and delivered, that I don't know that we have seen a first 100 days in government as successul,
except for Trump's, of course.
Well, I don't know how many people would call that successful, but I think that would be listen, those are big feats. Not sure if that's at all possible, but I do think that it is primed for him to really make a mark. And the G7 is a little could be a bit of the icing on the cake. It could also go totally sideways. What's your prediction?
I think you're right. And I mean, maybe you'll be looking for a liberal leader sooner than later because Mark Carney will have accomplished everything that he needed to in the first 100 days. But I think it's going to be very choreographed. There's going to be a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Carney has invited the Mexican president as well, which will just heat things up even more.
Yes.
I think she hasn't said whether or not she's coming, but it's really kind of this idea of there's so many problems all over the world. Come sit at our table, and that could go either way for sure. I couldn't agree more with you on that. I mean, he may as well invite Zelensky, and we can talk all the world's problems out, sitting at one table.
Yes.
I think we're going to have to watch and see, but I think ultimately most Canadians don't realize that this is happening next week, that it's happening within our borders. And I think what I'm waiting for is that first visual of Donald Trump getting off Air Force One in Alberta, and for Canadians to say, hold on, wait a second. I mean, I hope he's not listening, but he's a felon in the U.S. We don't typically let felons into the country.
Right.
Obviously, there's some diplomatic excuse there, but it's a weird situation to have your worst enemy at the moment enter your borders and stay for a while. So,
and what do we think about the location of the G7?
In Alberta?
Yeah. Do you know much about this region? Do you know?
Katamaskus? What's it called?
I never know how to say this.
I don't know. But
Kananasis?
All my Albertan friends are like, come on.
Everyone from Alberta is like, what are you talking about right now? How do you not? So it looks beautiful, but you don't know much about it?
I don't know much about it.
No.
But I will say other G7s, when we hosted it in Parry Sound, that's a quaint area in Ontario. And yeah, I don't know. The whole thing is going to be interesting. Whether or not Danielle Smith will make an appearance, I'm sure she will.
Where do they stay when they're at?
Oh, at hotels, at resorts.
But where? What's the hotel there?
I don't know.
I'm so curious about all of this now. Stay tuned.
Are you going to rent a room?
No, I'm just where do you? Have you seen pictures? I mean, where do you stay? Okay, I'm going to find out more, and I'm going to share.
Maybe
more.
You'll become the official ambassador for Kananasis, Alberta. Maybe we should all go.
Honestly, it looks stunning. You see the Canadian Rockies, a beautiful landscape, the lakes, the forest. It looks absolutely stunning.
Why do I seem to think that we built a fake lake in Muskoka at some point for one of these things?
Don't you remember this? I know it's true.
Tony Clement, I think that was the Harper era. We'll forget that now. This is the Carney era. There's no fake lakes. Okay.
Don't ask us about geography. You didn't come to this podcast to learn about geography, and we have just proven that we should never really talk about it. But politics, any day.
Any day. And with that, we are going to leave it there for this week. But we will be back next week. Have no fear. Pending somebody's sickness or children being homesick, we are going to come back with an exciting new episode next week with a very special guest. And we'll talk to you then.
Thank you for listening. New episodes air every Friday.
Subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and find us at beyondaballot.com.